We recently set up a Tally Arbiter system and found a way how to use TP-Link Kasa smart plugs in order to indicate whether or not a specific camera was on or not. And so I'm going to show you how we set that up. So the purpose behind that is so that people who are on stage will know which camera is the active camera, so that they will be able to know the camera that is active, and they can actually talk to the camera in order to be able to connect more with the audience. So hopefully people will be able to connect with the audience at home if they wanted to actually talk to the people at home. Then they can actually find the light that is on, and then they can directly look at the camera and talk to the person at home. Sometimes when they are talking to the person, they might say, if you're watching at home, etc., then they can actually look at the actual camera that is on. And so it will hopefully make the people who are watching at home with direct eye contact feel like that they're actually looking at the person. So that's the whole idea behind the Tally Arbiter system that is set up there. So I was able to find a way to actually hook up the Kasa smart plugs. We had some extra plugs around, and so I thought, well, if I could figure out a way to hook up the plug, then we could use it that way. So I did that. So I'll just do a little demonstration of how the actual lights work, and then I will actually show you how to set up the Tally Arbiter system and configure it so that you can actually work with the Kasa smart plugs, so that when the camera is active from the various different sources that you have, you can use OBS as a source, or vMix, or any number of, you can actually hook it up directly with the ATEM, all running through Tally Arbiter system. And then just it basically figures out from the multiple sources that you have connected to it to figure out which camera is actually active, and then you can assign actions to it. So I will show you the example, and then we'll show you how to set that up. So let's get started. So I'll show you how we have the TP-Link Kasa smart plugs set up, and they're basically set right at the back of the sound booth here. We have a camera there, and then you can see right up here, that's the Kasa smart plug, and it's just got an LED plugged into just a night light, and so that will work there. And then we have another one on this side with another one, and it's also set up there. So I will now go up to the front with, I've got an iPad, and I can show you how I can activate it from the front using Touch Portal and the iPad. So I'm at the front of the church now, and you can see the sound booth is at the back at the right, and the cameras are there. And I've got the iPad here, so I can basically turn on the cameras. And so you can see that the camera has been activated with the Kasa link there. And then if I were to activate the other one there, it would activate that. So you can go
back and forth, so whichever ones are there. We also have cameras that are up at the front here on tripods with PTZ mounts. And we have M5 sticks that can be attached to that. I will do a different video on how you can hook up the M5 sticks to the Tally Arbiter server and have those work properly, but I'm just concentrating on the Kasa ones here. On the stage, they can see which camera is actually active.
So I've created a blog post, and I will put the link to the URL in the description of the video here. And I will just show you the first step is to actually go through and set up your plugs. I'm not going to show you how to do that. I assume that you probably know how to do that, but you just basically need to go through and use your smartphone to actually set up the plugs and hook it up to your Wi-Fi, etc. So we won't go through that, but then what you need to do is actually go through once you've got the plugs set up. I will tell you the key thing is when you're naming your plugs, you want to name them something that you can recognize, so that when you are getting the device IDs that you actually need to send when you're talking to the web services, which is what the Tally Arbiter needs to do, you need to then be able to recognize the name of the plug that you called it. So the next step, once you've set up the plug, is you need to get the device ID. And so to do that, I found a tool called Postman. Postman is a tool that lets you work with various web services out there, and Kasa is a web service. The TP-Link web service allows you to control by doing web requests to either log into the TP-Link web service and then send web requests to turn on your plug, turn off your plug, list the devices, etc. So this Postman app actually will help with actually finding all the data that you need to do to send the request there. So we'll just click on Postman there, and I've already signed up there, but you just need to sign in. So we'll just launch Postman here. And the first thing, once you've actually signed in, I'll show you here how this works. Postman is set up in workspaces, so we'll click here to workspaces, and then you have the default one is my workspace there. So we'll click on my workspaces there, and then I have inside here collections here, and I have a collection called TP-Link, and my suggestion would be to create a collection called TP-Link for all of the requests that you're going to create here in order to save all of its the collection is just basically a folder that lets you save all of the requests for that. It's kind of like a project there. And so we'll just go under this TP-Link project here. So the first thing that you want to do once you've got Postman set up is you want to get the device IDs. One prerequisite you need to do before you actually log into the TP-Link web service is that you need to generate a unique ID that identifies basically the Tally Arbiter Server client to the TP link system, which would be sort of like you logging in on behalf of the Tally Arbiter server. And so you just need to click in the blog post, there's a link to a UID generator here, and you can just click on this here and it will automatically generate this UUID generator here, and you can just click on this. It'll automatically regenerate a new UID, and then all you need to do is just click copy on this, and then we will just use that in the next step for logging in. So just click copy on that, and then we will paste it into the login step in the next step. After you've generated your unique ID, then you need to log in to the Kasa web service, and you're going to use the unique ID, terminal UUID. You're going to paste that into the request. You can use the blog post JSON there, and you're going to fill in your user ID and your password. It's blurred out here, but you're going to paste that there, and then you're going to paste the terminal ID, the unique ID that we just generated in the previous step there in this JSON post request. So you're going to create a post request to the URL in the blog post there. Then you're going to hit the send button once you've created that post request, and once you hit the send, then you are going to get a response back, and this response back is going to create a token. This token is what you're going to need after in order to send further requests to turn on the lights, turn off the lights, to actually list the devices that are in your account. So any further requests are going to need this token after you have logged in. So that is the first step of going in and authorizing yourself with the Kasa web service. The next step is you need to find the device IDs, and in order to do that, you would create another request here in Postman. And so you can just, I've already created one that I called here list devices here. And here you're going to create another post request, and it's going to be, again, in the blog post it tells you the URL is going to be to wap.tplinkcloud.com with the token that you just received in the login request that you just did. So we're just going to put that token there, and then in the body we're going to set just this method get device list, and again you can set that up properly, and when you hit send on that, then you're going to get a response back that shows all of the devices that you have attached to your account. So once you have that, there are two things that you need to take a look at. The first thing is going to be you can recognize what device you want to look at, you might have multiple devices. One that isn't the device that you want to look at, that might be for other, you might have other plugs that are uh, in use for other things that you want to do, but you need to find the actual plug that you want to actually control. So here we have, this one here is sound booth wide tally. And so here, that's the name. And then up above, I've actually taken out the device ID for security purposes, but this device ID would be in the actual list of devices that actually came back. And so what you're going to want to do is just copy this device ID and use that when we actually go and configure the Tally Arbiter server, when we're configuring the actions in order to turn on the device or turn off the device. So that is the one piece of information that you want to get from the response back from the list of the devices. Then the other thing that you want to do, depending on where you are in the world, there are multiple servers that TP-Link has around the world, and depending on where you are, the app server URL that you want to use, the URL that it suggests that you want to use, because that would be the closest one to you. I'm in North America, so it's suggesting that I would use this URL to send the request to, so that it gives you the fastest response for sending the request and getting back and forth. So if you're in Europe, they have a one for Europe. If you're in Asia, they have one in Asia. I don't know exactly where all the servers are, but it will tell you exactly, depending on where the device is, which one you should use. So when you're listing the devices, then just use the app server. So you're basically going to be finding the device name that you want to look for, and then you want to find the device ID and the actual app server that you want to send the request to. So those two things you want to do for that. The next thing that you need to do is, let's actually go through and actually install the Tally Arbiter server. So the first thing that you need to do is install NodeJS. That runs on NodeJS, so you can download it here. So let's click here, and you can download for whichever platform you're working with. I'm working with Windows, so we'll download it, and I will work with the 64-bit installer. So we'll download that installer, and then we'll just install Node.js. Node.js is fairly simple to install. Just go through all of the standard installation, next. There's a couple of things at the end that you'll want to do after it is finished. So Node.js is ready to install, and it will figure out how much space it needs. Then it will start the installation process. It's just a standard installation, and you can just go through and hit next, accept the license agreement, next. Just install it in the default location. That's probably the easiest thing. Accept all of the different options here. That really works the best to install all of the dependencies there. Okay, then this one here, you want to install the necessary tools there. So you want to check off that and hit next. And then we want to install, and then say yes. We want to make changes to the system, and it will then install NodeJS properly on your system. While it is doing that, I will go back and we can actually download the actual Tally Server program. The Tally Server program you can get from the Git repository that I made. This is not the original repository person. I forked this in order to be able to make modifications so that it will work properly with being able to send web requests to the way that the web requests worked on the original version of the Tally Arbiter server didn't allow it to do HTTPS requests. So I modified it so that we could do that and set that up. I'm working with the original developer to get those changes put back into the original server. But for right now, you can just grab the version of the server that I have on my repository there. In order to actually grab it, if you don't have Git installed, I don't know if you do or not, but you can basically click on the code button here and then click on download zip, and you can download the zip file there. So once the zip file is downloaded, you can just open it up and then you can just extract it however you want to extract it. I'm just going to extract it and put it in, let's put it under my I'll just put it under my C drive here. So that is actually installed. So Tally Arbiter, basically, once you have it installed, you can run it from it's a command line program, but then it also has a web interface. Okay, Node.js has installed properly, so we can finish that. And then there's some other things that you need to install for going to install different utilities that need to be done. So you just hit press any key and it's telling you it's going to install the different things that need to be done. So you can just say yes on those and it will install the rest of the things that need to be installed on that, and just let it finish off that. So as I was saying, the Tally Arbiter server you can run from the command prompt, and then once you have that running in the command prompt, you can actually visit the web page and have the web interface to actually configure the actual system to be able to set up the different sources such as OBS, if you have a TSL system, or you can set up various sources such as an ATEM or other Blackmagic, any different type of mixers, Roland mixers, etc. You can add to the Tally Arbiter system. It will recognize those, and once you set up the sources, then you can connect the camera as devices to it, and from there you can then set up the actions in order to hook up the different devices to the camera and hook up. Then the final step would be hooking up the actual plug of the Kasa plug to make sure that the action would be to turn on the plug when the camera's active, turn off the plug when it's not active. So that's how the system actually works there. So it's almost finished, I believe, setting up all the requirements for the NodeJS there. And hopefully we'll be able to then go in and configure the Tally Arbiter system. So everything is installed with NodeJS, and you can just hit enter once it's finished there. And now we're ready to actually go and install the rest of the Tally Arbiter system. So to do that, we can just start a command prompt. And then we'll just go to the place where we installed the Tally Arbiter system. So we'll go cd/ Tally Arbiter master. And then we can just take a look here. Everything is good there. The first thing that we need to do is install the dependencies that Tally Arbiter needs to have, all of the libraries and things that it needs to work. So in order to work with that, you just need to type in npm install and hit enter, and that will then work and install all of the files and other dependencies that the Tally Arbiter system needs to work. Now that that has finished properly, then we can actually start the Tally Arbiter system, and you can do that by typing node index.js and hit enter. That will start the Tally Arbiter system, and you can see here it says Tally Arbiter is running on port 4455. So now we can basically go to localhost 4455, localhost 4455 in your web browser. And then you can see this is the web interface for the Tally Arbiter system. And once we have done that, then we can go in and we can set up all of our sources and devices that Tally Arbiter would use in order to set that up. So the way that we do that is we can click on settings here. It is password protected. The password, the username is admin, and the password by default is 12345. And you can change that once you've run it the first time. You can change it. There's a config.json file in the directory. I'm not going to save that. But this is the actual settings page for the Tally Arbiter server. So what we have here, the first thing that you need to do is set up your sources. Your sources are going to be your basically video mixers that your cameras and different things are going to be attached to. So let's just actually go in and set up a source. There are many different types of sources that you can do. You can set up a Blackmagic ATEM, a video hub, here OBS, vMix, a Roland Smart Tally system, a bunch of different ones that you can set up. But let's just go in and set up an OBS instance. So we'll click on OBS Studio. Now we're going to give it a name. So let's call it Test OBS. and then we're going to set the IP address of OBS. Let's just actually do it 127.0.0.1 on that. That's the local address. If it's on the same computer, you can use that. The port is going to be the WebSocket address of the port. Now you need to have, let's see, I've got OBS actually running on the system here. So we can actually click on this and we can look and we can see under tools, the WebSocket plugin is already installed, and we can see that we have the WebSockets running on 4444. So if we go back to the Tally Arbiter server, we're going to be setting that port to 4444. Password for the WebSocket, I don't have one set up, but if you did have one set up, then you would just set the password there. And then we're going to hit save there, and then you will see the test OBS source. When it's green, means that it is actually connected properly to the system there. Okay. If we actually go down, there's a log down at the bottom here, and it tells me here that I did some stuff here, and I added a source test OBS, and source test OBS connected successfully there. So this has some good feedback for when you're trying to set things up there. So that's a good way to do that. Now, the next step, once you've set up a source, you can set up multiple sources if you have multiple mixers, etc. Multiple versions of OBS, etc., or whatever on there. I do have an ATEM. It's not hooked up right now, but at the church we have an ATEM hooked up as well. So again, I would add another source here to the ATEM and set up the parameters for the ATEM as well. Then the next step, once you've set up all your sources, is you're going to set up your devices. Your devices represent your cameras, and your devices are where you're actually going to hook up what happens when the devices actually become active on that. So let's just set up here. Let's call this camera 1, and device description test camera. Here you don't need to actually set anything for the TSL address unless it's actually a TSL device. So that's basically all you need to do to set that up. So, and then once you set that up, then you can configure the rest of the devices. So the device, once you've set it up and actually basically name the device by adding it, then what you need to do is configure the source of the device. So camera 1 doesn't have any sources there. So let's edit the source here. Now this I've found for our purposes, you can basically make it very complicated if you have multiple different sources and have the camera hooked up to multiple mixers and stuff. You might have one for the preview, you might have one for the program bus, etc. And the Tally Arbiter system will let you kind of program things to make it as complicated as you want for your workflow. But for us, we just basically set it up by default so that it is unlinked for both the preview and the program bus. I found that really works the best for us. but you can figure out how it's going to work best for you. So I just leave those settings the way they are. The next thing that you would want to do is actually click Add Source. So we click Add Source, and then you need to actually, I only have one source set up in the system, but if my ATEM was set up, then I would see that you could add the ATEM in as well. But what we will now be able to do is we're going to look at the test OBS source, and then we can select the address. The address is actually going to be all of the sources that are in your system here from OBS. Okay, so we have a whole bunch of different system sources that are there, that are actually in OBS. So I have here basically when the actual source becomes active in OBS by setting a scene properly in there, then it will send OBS will send the information to Tally Arbiter, and Tally Arbiter will then be able to determine that the source is actually active, and then so this is an NDI source in OBS, so we'll set that as the camera there. So we'll then hit save there. So now we have one source attached to this device called camera. Now, finally, to actually say if this camera was on, so then we would be able to finally hook up the Kasa plug to the when this camera becomes active, we can set that up by editing the actions on this. So we click Edit Action, and we're going to add an action here for camera 1. We're going to say the bus type is going to be program. We only use the program bus. You can set up if you wanted to do preview. We don't use preview in our system, but you could set up the preview if you had, basically if you use OBS preview, then you could set that up. And then you want to set the on is the state that we're going to set up next. Then the next thing that we want to do is the output type. We want to select here for the Kasa ones, we want to do an outgoing webhook. Okay. So to configure that, this is where we want to go back to the device IDs and tokens and the app server URL in order to put that. So first we want to set our protocol to be HTTPS, and then the URL is we want to be the here in the, this is where we want to go back to our Postman. We just actually want to paste in just the part without the HTTPS there. I just want to grab that part there and paste it in here. And then we also want to, at the end of it, we want to put the question mark token equals And then we want to use the token here that we had from the login URL there. That is what you need to get in the URL there. You can leave the port and path blank. The method here you need to set to post. The content you can leave as JSON. The post data is going to be, I'll actually grab that from the blog post here. So we're going to grab this data here. And then we're going to replace here where it says device ID, your device ID. You're going to grab the device ID from the Postman list devices there. So we'll just basically go in here, copy this, then we're going to paste this into the thing there. Then we're going to go to our list devices, and we're going to grab our device ID for the device that we want to grab here. Going to copy that, and then here I'm just going to replace the ones in the angle brackets with the actual device ID there. And that will be fine on that. Just explain a little bit here. This last part here where it says state 1 means that it's going to set the state to be 1, meaning on. So it's going to actually turn the light on. So when the program is on, it's going to turn the light on. So we can do that. Then so we now have one action set up for that. Then we can basically go in here and we can actually, I'm just going to copy the same thing here on this. It's the easiest way to do that is just copy this here because we've got the device already copied there. And then we're going to add another action here. We're going to set it again to the program. We're going to set the preview, the active state to be off. And then we're going to again set another webhook. And it's going to be again an HTTPS. And then we'll set the data here to the same one with the same device ID. And this time we're going to change the state here to be 0, which means it's going to turn it off there. And then the other thing that we need to do is grab the URL. So we can grab the URL from the Postman link here. And grab and then grab our token again. So again, do the question mark, token equals the token, and then we save that. So now we have the two actions. So that will basically, when the scene is actually selected, as I showed you in the example earlier in the demonstration, that the light will turn on when this actual camera becomes active, and when the scene becomes inactive, then the light should turn off. So that is how you can set that up. So if you have any questions, just let me know. I also have a way of using M5 sticks to program it. It's a little bit different of configuring it, but I will do a different tutorial on how to actually program the M5 sticks. You can actually, those are basically, I'll show you here, they are set up as connected listeners, and so you can set those up as listeners, and I'll show you in another tutorial how you can set up the M5 sticks to show those, and they're basically, they work really nicely to actually we've got those hooked up to a couple of iPads up at the front. So as I said, you can look at the blog post that is connected to this tutorial, and hopefully you can use that to set this up. If you have any questions, you can leave comments in the blog post, or you can comment on the video here, and I will hopefully be able to help you out. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you will find this useful. If you want to purchase the Kasa plugs, there are links in the description and also in the blog post.